Hello and welcome to this episode of Tripology. I'm Alun and I'm here with the ever sociable Adam.
Alan, my mate, you won't believe where we are.
We're on a bit of a road trip, aren't we?
We
road
are.
Tripology.
We're at Nelson in the Kootenays, a region in British Columbia. What do you think so far?
I'm enjoying it. I've been enjoying your driving, ever so safe, I feel. We saw what can only be described as a large number of wildlife animals on the way, didn't we?
We saw a skunk.
We
I've
did
never
see-
seen a skunk in the wild.
Absolutely insane to see a skunk, wasn't it? An unusual animal in its movements across the road, but I thought you avoided it very nicely. Adam, there's something we've not mentioned as of yet, and that's that we're sat at a table across from someone we've just met. You've met them before, actually, haven't you?
Very, very lucky to have met them before.
So I'll let you introduce them.
Well, I'll first off by saying, welcome Fergus to the podcast.
Thank you.
And the reason why I love the fact that we're here with Fergus now is because we had a little conversation about your travel insights and your journey to come to Canada.
Yes.
And I was really taken by them. And so I'm very glad we've been able to arrange a conversation with you.
Thank you.
He is sweet.
Yeah,
isn't
he
he?
is very nice.
Because you're quite young, aren't you, Fergus?
I'm 24.
24, right?
Crikey. Oh, I remember when I was 24. I'd have been in Africa when I was 24.
Blimey.
Yeah.
Well, you're not in Africa now.
I'm not in Africa now, but I am in Nelson, which is also where Fergus is. So we've just been talking to Fergus for some other projects. We've been interviewing him a little bit, but I think now we're on Tripology. We can get to the nitty gritty of travel. So you mentioned to us prior that you did a lot of traveling as a kid.
Yes.
You went to Asia, you did all that stuff. I didn't travel that much when I was a kid, so I'd love to hear about that.
Okay. Traveling as a kid is so much different, obviously. You are kind of completely controlled by your parents. And my parents are amazing. So, I mean, that's lucky for me. But it's so funny the difference between what you would let yourself do as an adult and what your parents wouldn't let you do as a kid. I
Right,
mean, even
yeah.
there's a story when we were in Thailand of we're getting street food, and obviously street food in Thailand, amazing. But my stepdad was so like, it could be so dangerous, which is fair enough. Like, you should be careful. But we were just like, no, you can't take it off us. And we just ate and ate and ate and ate until he snatched it off us, to look after us. And in the end, he was the only one that got ill. We were all completely fine, and he was the only one that didn't eat it. These days, I would just eat it and not think about it at all. Do you know what I mean? So I think you kind of get a different experience in the sense that it's so much more independent, obviously. But yeah, I think your parents are more likely to worry about you, whereas when you're a 24-year-old, you're just like, I'll be fine.
What were some of the most intriguing places that you traveled to when you were young?
Yeah, I would say Thailand probably number one.
Mm-hmm.
It was amazing. And like I say, my parents are very good at experiential things. They're much more about that than oh, I said that in the last one. They're much more experiential than monetary and buying things. So they took us to some amazing places to just show us things, I guess. They'd never been either, so it was such a nice thing to do as a family to all experience at the same time.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in York, even though I'm wearing a Scotland hat.
He's wearing a Scotland hat, tropologist.
Yeah.
Scotland hat is where I went to uni. I went to Glasgow.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
If tropologists want to see the Scotland hat, they can go to youtube.com at Tropology Podcast and have a look at it.
It's amazing.
And they can also see my hat that you've dubbed a train engineer.
I think Adam looks like he's about to lay some railroad in the interior BC.
Yeah,
I'm
do
the
love
only
trains.
hatless person, but there we go. What can you do about it? I think that's an interesting perspective. I travelled just a little bit with my folks, but it was very much like car journeys across the Channel Tunnel to Poland, those sort of things. Adam, did you do much travelling with your folks?
I did. Well, I wouldn't have called it travelling. I mean, we were lucky to go on holiday many times when we were young, and I would say that probably shaped the way that I travel now. Certainly that curiosity. When you're really young, if you are open to those sorts of things and exposed to them, I suppose is probably more accurate to say, then maybe, do you know what? I've just twigged. I remember when I was young, I would always be really jealous that I couldn't understand what foreign people were saying.
Just linguistically.
Yeah. So I used to go to Turkey a lot when I was really young. And I remember listening to Turkish people speak at markets and sort of haggle at the bazaars and things. And I used to get really envious that I couldn't understand what they were saying. Were there
I
any,
get what you mean.
were there any things that happened to you when you were growing up, your childhood, that you can remember now? A little story you'd like to share?
Traveling stories. No, I think the only ones of me being completely reckless as a child and hurting myself. So I don't know how relevant they are to my experience of traveling now. I mean, I am kind of hectic when I travel, so maybe it's carried on like that.
Hectic how?
Oh, I lose so many things.
Really?
I'm so bad for it. So bad. Not important things, but just the little things where you're like, where's my deodorant?
Yeah.
Where's my toothbrush? Where's my shampoo?
Where is your shampoo?
They
I
could
have no idea. I haven't had a shower for 2 days.
they could, if you had a travel bag, a little toiletries bag,
Oh,
they could all
you
be in the same
so
place.
easily not lose all those things. I
Right.
just do
Are you
every time.
an all carry-on style traveler? Have you got a suitcase or a backpack? What's going on?
When I came to Canada, a suitcase, but for my next step, a backpack. Yeah,
Do you have a next step?
potentially. I want to go to South America,
Cool.
so I'm just trying to figure out when.
Okay, nice.
Wicked.
That was my last big trip, was like a year in South America. I think it was
Wow.
probably the continent that I had the most fun on holistically.
Yes,
It's like nice and easy to travel. Do you speak Spanish?
a little bit.
Okay, it helps a lot. It opens a lot of doors speaking Spanish. I can understand enough to get by, but my speaking is not that great.
Do you know enough to say, can I borrow your toothbrush?
I can say, can I?
You can just say toothbrush. Yeah, so that's I definitely recommend that you go there. How was the linguistic situation as a kid? Because kids are like sponges for language. We were talking on the drive up that when you're a kid, you have this language acquisition device in your head. You can learn languages so quickly.
Yeah.
Did you try and learn languages when you were a child in Thailand?
No, not as a child. When I was about 16 or 17, I chose to learn German.
Wow.
Just on my own, which was fun. I mean, I really enjoyed it, and I got to the level of, I went to Berlin and I spoke German to people, and I mean, I'm not saying I was amazing, but I could hold a conversation. And then,
Why did you choose German?
I don't. I did it at school, GCSE
Yeah,
level,
yeah.
and then I just liked it as a language. I'm not really sure. I wanted to do. You remember EPQ? Did you have to do EPQ?
No, I don't remember that. What's
It's
that?
like it was like an additional A level you could do, which was like a self-guided one. I wanted to learn German for it, and they said no, like halfway through me doing it. And I was like, well, I've done 6 months. I might as well just continue now.
Fair enough. Well, what is it about South America specifically that interests you?
I think, like Alan says, it seems fun. You know,
Yeah.
and I'm kind of that stage of my life where I went through 5 years of intense stress at uni. I did mechanical engineering, and
Wow.
I got my master's and everything. It was hard. It was really hard, and
Are you glad you did it?
yeah, really glad. I mean, not that I'm using it at all, but there you go. I think that's a funny thing. Just as like a wraparound, I was talking to someone else who works at the hostel yesterday about how we're both kind of massively not overqualified, but we are massively qualified to be at a hostel. But there is something about the appeal of having done a degree to then come into something that's so like relaxed and like people are friendly and you don't have to stress. And like Cindy says it all the time, my manager, we're not saving lives. And it's like, oh, I can just chill out.
That's quite a nice saying, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're not saving lives.
Yeah.
I think South America would be a great place for you to recharge. It's like unique topography because there's mountains and snow and there's sea and there's Amazon jungle. It's really, really beautiful. I think what's interesting about you as a traveler is that a lot of people stumble across travel as the antidote to the stresses of life. I know I was in exactly your situation, just finished university and was like, okay, what do I want to do now? And I stumbled across travel as being like the solution to that problem in my head. But travel's kind of been omnipresent in your life because you got to do so much of it as a kid. So it's less
Yes.
something you're stumbling across. And I guess you're remembering happy times and trying to
Yeah,
integrate
true.
that going forward.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I think that's a good point, actually. I hadn't even thought about that. Yeah, I guess it's maybe something that I've thought is part of my life. Yeah.
Yeah, we all
Yeah.
find travel in different ways, I think, and travel means different things to us. I think for me, like travel means the end of or the cessation of like repetitive tasks, and
Yeah.
in that sense, it's freedom.
Yeah.
What does travel mean to you, any of you?
For me, I love the exploration, the discovery, always being somewhere new, always meeting like-minded people as well. And again, I've said it many times on the podcast, really trying to integrate into communities and cultures and try to understand a lot more
Yeah.
about things, because when it comes to learning and opening your mind, it's a fantastic way to learn lots of new things and change the way that you think. And I think in the UK, we're all from the UK and we had a very specific upbringing, and we probably share a lot of similarities in terms of our upbringing. So we have a certain view of the world, and that's obviously reinforced through media, mass media, and certain documentaries you might see. What's quite funny about Canada is I think that British Columbia and Alberta is probably how Canada as a whole is portrayed
Yeah.
growing up. When you
Yeah,
see
fully.
these wildlife documentaries of the wilderness, forests, lakes, mountains, that's pretty much northern BC and Alberta, isn't it? And then you come here and there's just so much more to offer, and you don't know that unless you experience it firsthand.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah, and it's like you say, of meeting people and culturally, even if it's not that different, there is enough difference to make it interesting and nice to talk about with people. And I think I've been lucky now that I've met people in Nelson who are Canadian and they've lived here, maybe not in Nelson their whole lives, but definitely Canada their whole lives. And it is completely different. I don't think I've had that experience until now of like just spending time with Canadian people. It's such a nice feeling to be like, get a better understanding of life here. I've really enjoyed it.
Amazing. Well, I mean, I don't know if are you a spiritual man?
I don't know. I'm an emotional man, for
Emotional
sure,
man. I
but
like
I don't know
that.
if spiritual.
Halfway through the episode, we like to take a moment just to slow things down and go on a brief meditation break. Let's do that, and we'll be back in a bit. And we're back, our conscious minds returning from the ether into our brains. When we were talking earlier, I really liked something you said. I was asking about, do you think the world would be a better place if everyone travelled? Can you tell me what your perspective was on that?
Yes. I said that I think for some people that would be true, that they would definitely benefit from it. But I think there's so many people, and we've already mentioned we're all from the UK. Everyone knows the stereotype. If you're from the UK, probably all of Europe does. The people that go to Europe or any other country and just think, I wish this was more British,
Right.
but I like that it's hot.
Yeah,
you know?
sure.
And like, let's set up a fish and chip shop in Spain. Why not? You know?
I think so often we have travel on this pedestal. We maybe need to remember that there are such a thing as bad travelers,
Absolutely.
and maybe it isn't for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone can benefit from a holiday. It doesn't mean they'll take something from it past that they liked, that it was warm or that it was pretty or whatever.
Yeah. And you know what? I'll be the first one to say I do lose quite a lot of energy over wishing more people travelled the way we did and thought the same things were important that we do.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, some people just aren't interested. They
Yeah.
want a holiday. They want a 2-week holiday to sit by the pool at a 4-star resort and have their all-inclusive cocktails, and they could not give two shits
Yeah.
about local culture or cuisine
Yeah.
or religion.
Yeah,
There's just
it's the people that fly to Mexico to go to an all-inclusive, and it's like, well, why don't you just go to Spain
yeah.
if you're just going to sit by the pool? I mean, that's something that I think even actually traveling has made me think so much about, is how some people think in a certain way, and I spent so long trying to get like, why don't you think like me? And then you just have to like, but you just don't.
I think that's probably more accurate. is that there is still this very optimistic part of me that thinks, but if they just experienced travel the way that maybe they would change, but maybe they wouldn't. And maybe that's something I'm going to have to accept.
I think that's something that I've had to accept, is like, you can hope, but actually some people are just going to be stuck in their ways, and there is nothing you can do about it.
Not through a podcast, not through a YouTube channel, not through anything.
Yeah.
Maybe we can change the world one traveler at a time. Maybe someone listening to this podcast was going to be the kind of traveler. Maybe they were just going to go off to Magaluf for a week, but now they think, screw all that, I'm going to go on a meditation retreat. They've listened to the meditation break. They're like, now's my chance.
Yeah, good stuff. So, Fergus, we've met before.
We have.
And I was really taken by a conversation that we had in the hostel kitchen.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, we were sharing a little glass of wine.
Yeah,
if my
you were
memory
buttering
serves
me up, I think.
Well, yeah.
You heard it here first,
Focus
folks.
with wine.
This is definitely an episode of Tripology. And I just wondered if we could talk a little bit about the experiences you've had of coming over from the UK to Canada, and the fact that, in my opinion, you're incredibly young to have had such profound realizations.
Yes. I also feel that, I guess. I didn't expect them. So I came to Canada, like I said, I was at uni and I had all that stress, and the idea to come to Canada wasn't mine, it was my now ex-girlfriend's. We came and like lived together, and it was a nice time. I had a good time. Things didn't really work out. I think, I don't want to say too much about her on here because it's not really fair, but like, we just didn't see eye to eye on so many things. And definitely emotionally we were different. And I am a very sensitive, like emotional person. So I think we were just jarring so much.
Mm-hmm.
And so the travel that I did on my own was immediately after we broke up, which is intense. It's very
Completely,
intense to be completely on your own after you break up.
Because how long had you been together before you moved to Canada?
Before we moved to Canada, year and a half, over a year and a half.
So it's a serious relationship, really.
Yeah, we were
at this
together
point.
over 2 years by the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting that travel puts such a magnifying glass on stuff. I know we're not talking necessarily about that individual particularly, but like I've been traveling with people who I've never argued with once, and then we go traveling and suddenly like you can't get money out of an ATM together without there being some sort of issue. And I think that travel really does put a spotlight, because it's quite stressful sometimes, travel.
Yeah, and I think maybe in our case it was that I thought maybe things will change because we're in a new place, completely new situation. It's almost like a blank slate. So yeah, I think so. And I think it can definitely highlight things for you. Like you say, even that you think you get on really well and then you start arguing over things, and maybe it's just change of circumstance. Yeah.
Totally.
So was it quite transformative, that period of your life then, when you were coming out of that relationship? And
Yeah, hugely. I mean, the traveling on my own, but even all this summer as well. Like, I was traveling for 9 days, which doesn't seem that long. 9 days on your own in a car, and like staying in the worst motels for a lot of money is the most, at times, lonely feeling I've had ever.
of course.
And like, to get through that and actually I went to Vancouver Island, and like some of the things I did, I was like, this is amazing. Like amazing. Like I say, I'm an emotional person. I would just sit on a beach and cry and be like, this is so hard, but so good at the same time. And that's definitely where I felt that companionship thing of, like, I had mates from the ski season that I'd done, and I would ring them every so often just to be like, look, I just want to tell someone like the day I've had. And it was one of the hardest things I've ever done, and one of the most rewarding, and definitely changed, which has come about as I developed this summer, but changed how I viewed myself, changed how I like talk to myself. Like, I gave myself so much support in those 9 days because I had to. There was no one else there to do it. And like everywhere I went, because it was April, there was no one there. Like Tofino in summer, packed. When I went, no one. Literally just me. So yeah, it was really good, and I definitely I felt like I matured in a way, if that makes sense.
It
Like,
makes total sense. I
yeah.
love that thing you just said about giving yourself support. I have to
Mm,
say that if there was one quintessential skill to solo travel, it would be the ability to be one's own support system.
yeah.
I think that there's ultimately travel can be this cacophonous hurricane of social situations where people galvanize and bond, and you're having Christmas with strangers and it feels dead amazing and sexy and beautiful and there's friends everywhere. But like ultimately you're going to be on a bus ride on your own for 8 hours, and the music, you're going to run out of Wi-Fi, and Spotify is going to stop working at some point. And at that point, you best be prepared to listen to the narrative inside your head and make peace with it. I
Mm,
think that people who can't do that, people whose instinct is to shove headphones in and listen to podcasts always, or hide behind extroversion, like they'll come to terms with the fact, traveling, you have to be on your own sometimes.
yeah.
Absolutely, and it's about having a constant distraction, isn't it?
Yes.
Always having something to distract you, and it allows you to not necessarily be confronted by your own thoughts.
Yeah.
Mm,
I would say that in part travel is that for me, perhaps.
I would agree. Yeah, I think that's exactly what happened to me on that trip. Was it was like, you have to look at this in the face because
Yeah.
you can't ignore it now. Like, you're
Yeah.
on your own.
Is
Yeah.
there anything that you've learned over the past year or two that will help shape your future?
I would say this summer has shaped my future for sure. Like, the experience, I guess, like, it was maybe in the last podcast, I can't remember. I was saying having this place as like my base.
Yeah.
I just knew I always had this like to come back to. I had a job and I had somewhere to stay,
Yeah.
as long as I didn't like mess it up. But I clearly haven't. So it just meant that I mean, I did more processing of things or whatever, but like, I guess I've met people and done things because I had that safe spot. And I think I was talking to my friend who lives here that we both kind of see it as this was a perfect stepping stone into be able to do things purely on your own or on our own,
Mhm.
because I knew her from the ski hill, and like, we were good friends then. So it was nice for me. I had someone to come to like see when I came to Nelson, and it was good. But yeah, it definitely has allowed us both to then be like, right, we can do this on our own, which is really nice and like a very good experience.
I think it's cool that you're like a mechanical engineer, but then you describe yourself as being this emotional person. I think it's
Yeah.
nice to experience that juxtaposition, that range of feelings, because I think often times people sort of pigeonhole themselves. Like, this is the
Mm,
kind of person I am. I'm rational, and I think about things in this way, and I build things and create. And then
yes.
other people, of course, are very in tune with their emotions. But I myself think I sort of skirt that line a little bit, and I think that maybe that's a good way to be whilst
Yeah.
traveling.
Yeah.
Travel is a problem solving exercise a lot of the time.
I also think as well, it's probably important to add to your point. Alan, you went to university, achieved
Yes.
great things. Fergus, the same. But the ability to let go of your qualifications and all that time that you've put in, all the effort, the money, to go and do something that will enable you to learn in other ways and create opportunities around the world, I think is really important. I think lots of people would pin all their hopes because of the amount of work, because of the amount of money on a job, on a line
Yeah.
of work that is associated with their degree or their qualifications. But I love the fact that people like you still make that decision just to park it for a few months or a few years and go and do something completely extraordinary.
Well, ultimately,
Yeah.
those are tools, right? Those qualifications are just tools that you can go back to and use whenever. Like, no one's going to take your masters away from you. It's there whenever
Yeah,
you need it.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and I think you can get caught in such a trap of like straight from uni into like going down to London, and then you're living in London and you're like going out every weekend. And I mean, some people that's good. For me, it wasn't. So yeah, I had to change something.
Totally. I think almost like my formative years at university were one of the things that made me fall in love with the idea of travel, because I was staying in, a shared house with a bunch of other university students. That's
Yeah.
like a hostel environment. That was my first
Mm,
exposure to how fun that could be, living
yeah.
with people. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I lived with 11 people in my first year in a
Nice.
flat, and It's intense, but it's so good. So
Yeah, I think a lot of people hold on to that. They enjoy that feeling so much, so they end up staying in academia for like their
yes,
whole lives.
yeah,
You'll get people who have lived and worked at the university forever because they love that feeling so much. But I mean, one of the other things, if you love the social aspect of university, hostel life, traveling can be a cool way to extend that.
definitely.
Yeah. So is this new mindset you've got? Are you going to South America, hopefully in the near future? And are you viewing it as sort of a temporary thing, or are you going there with an open mind? Who knows where you could sort of end up?
Yeah, no idea. I have no plans.
Because you must have still a year left of your IEC visa, right?
Yes, yeah. So it's not completely. I'm not. Yeah, I have no like. I will not come back to Canada, or I will or will not go wherever else after. Yeah, I'm kind of just thinking. I just want to go and see how long I can stay, and I mean that like mentally and monetarily. I'll just see. Yeah.
Cool.
Nice.
Open book.
Open
Yeah.
book, which is the best way to be, isn't it? Fergus, we've got to let you go because you've got travel vaccinations to
I do,
have,
yes.
which is obviously an important part of traveling. I've had rabies and yellow fever and Japanese encephalitis. All
The
that
vaccination
hepatitis.
is important.
Yeah, certainly.
I think now.
I think if you've got rabies,
The podcast's off.
the podcast probably has to shut down. Yeah.
Okay,
You should
we're going. Oh, yeah.
get within a 100-mile radius of me if I'm like if I'm choosing now to admit I am actually rabid. But
I
it's
thought the microphone was looking a bit frothy.
Alan, you're drinking water. Isn't it a hydrophobic situation on the old rabies? No, certainly not. But have a good vaccination. I think
Thank you.
we're all keen to promote travel vaccinations. You definitely, if you're going to Africa, get your yellow fever vaccine first, because otherwise they administer it to you at the airport.
Crikey.
Yeah, it's important.
Well noted. Can't thank you enough, Fergus.
Yes.
What we'll do is, if it's all right with you, we will sort of keep tabs on how things go over the next
Sure.
6 months and
Yeah.
check in with you. And we might do an episode in the future when you're dancing around Colombia or whatever you want to do.
Absolutely. If the
Sweet.
audience has any questions for Fergus, they can email us, tropologypodcast@gmail.com. Send us a direct message on Instagram @tropologypodcast. Watch this video on youtube.com. There's lots of ways to get in touch with us, interact with us, just become a tropologist. And we've got Patreon, haven't we, Adam?
We have patreon.com/tropology podcast.
Well done. Look at you go.
And another thing, if you're listening to this now and you think, I've got some stories to share, I'd like to be interviewed, I want to hang out with the Tropology team,
Email them in.
send us an email, rate the show.
Absolutely, rate it. Okay, well, like gloomy darkness hanging over us, I feel like the present is something to leave now in the past, and we'll blast off forward into a bright, beautiful tomorrow. Let's go there now. Will you come with me?
I'll come with you, Alan. Let's do it.
Yeah,
Come on,
let's
Fergus.
go.
Let's get there now.
Bye!
Bye.